let's see. These folks have been neglected. So I got to pay them a little attention here. It's a young lady, sir. Well, you got a beautiful dress on. Let's call on you. There you go.
Mr. President, I'm Judge Trudy M. White, and I'm the District Court Judge here in the 19th Judicial District Court.
Good to see you, Judge.
I am also the Reentry Court Judge for our parish. And I did notice when you spoke at the State of the Union, you made your address, that the first issue that you did address was criminal justice reform. I'd like to know, as Reentry Court Judge, what incentives could you offer our governor, our new governor, and governors across the United States that will provide opportunities for felons who are returning as they exit the criminal justice system?
Well, Judge, you probably know more than I do.
Well, can my people get with your people to get those incentives down here?
Absolutely. I'll have my people call your people.
All right.
But
thank you, Judge.
But I will tell you what I know I've seen with my own eyes. I was in Camden with a fellow federal district court judge who had taken, had worked with the U.S. attorney there to supplement some of the reentry programs that were already there with some grants. And this judge, she's a wonderful woman, just like you, and she had this terrific lead probation officer. And together what they had done is just made sure that anybody who got released, the day they were out, they were getting a call from the probation officer. And the probation officer would say, all right, what do you need? Do you need clothes? What are you doing in terms of a place to stay? How are you going to think about getting your resume together? Do you have an alarm clock? Just basic stuff. How are you going to get around? Because so often what happens is these young people are getting released and they're just dropped off in the neighborhood where they were. Oftentimes part of the reason they got down a wrong path in the first place is the mom and dad might not have been there, or they might have moved by now, and so they're literally all alone. And so this young man who was there, who had gone through this process, he had been arrested when he was 17 and had a record that accumulated, then arrested at 27, spent 10 years in federal prison, was released at 37, and he really decided, I want to change my life. He had a spiritual awakening, and he started just pounding the pavement and got a job at a fast food place. And he was describing what it was like. He had been doing this about 3 months, and he still didn't have enough money for rent, and the halfway house that he was staying at, it was about to kick him out because they only have a certain number of slots and you don't stay there long enough. And he was saying how his old friends, the drug dealers and the gangbangers who he had used to run with, they would come up every once in a while. And he'd be sitting there in his uniform, flipping burgers and serving food, and they'd be talking to him, hey man, anytime you're ready. Those are the only clothes you got? Those are the same shoes we saw you in 10 years ago. You know, this is the new style. And that temptation for him was powerful. Now, this is where a well-designed reentry program comes in, because what happened was the judge, the probation officer, they worked with him, signed him up. The judge, unfortunately, because the program didn't have a lot of money, had to basically do a collection, dig into her own pocket, but they got the fees to have him go study at a community college to be an emergency medical technician. And he ended up graduating from this class, working for a private health firm, and then by the time he was sitting next to me 3 or 4 years later, or maybe 5 years later, he's now working for the county as an EMT, fully trained, saving lives. But the point is that it required intensive intervention and support and help. But what a smart investment that was. Because if we spent whatever it cost during those 1, 2, 3 years of transition to help that person get their life straight, we might have just saved ourselves another 10 years or 15 years or 20 years of incarcerating him on taxpayer expense. So it made me realize that if we really want to be smart on crime, you've got, let's say, a maximum minimum sentence, mandatory minimum sentence of 20 years for some drug-related charge. If we reduce the amount of time that they're incarcerated, took all those savings and we took just some of that for 1, 2 years of reentry programs that are highly supervised, then we're going to get better results. Safer streets, better citizens, because he's now paying taxes as an AMT instead of taking taxes as a ward of the state. Less violence, more hope. He's got an opportunity now to be a father as opposed to an absent presence in a child's life. That's how we rebuild communities. And that's why this is such a promising area. And as I said, I want to make sure to acknowledge, this is an area where there's been some really powerful bipartisan, interesting coalitions. I think the evangelical community, because they have a lot of strong prison ministries, they care about this. They believe in redemption and second chances, and so they've gotten involved. And you've got libertarians who just don't like the idea of the state spending that much money on prisons. They've gotten involved. And so there's a lot of good work. And as I said, Cedric's been a leader in this process, so we got to see if we can make this happen. All right? But my people get with your people. That redhead right there. It's good having hair like that. You stand out in the crowd.
My name is Martin Brown. I'm from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And my question is about education. Education is one of the most important things in achieving equal opportunity. And in the past decades, we've seen desegregation orders lifted, and we've seen a resegregation in the South. Furthermore, there's huge disparities in resources for different students in different school districts and parishes. And I was wondering, what can the federal government do? What have you done? And what do you think should happen in the future to resolve these issues that we have been fighting for decades?
Are you a teacher, by the way?
I'm not. I'm a student.
Where are you going to school?
LSU.
Fantastic. What do you study?
Math and economics.
All right. Well, maybe you'll solve this problem. Well, thanks for the question. It's a great question. I talked about this at the town hall. In this, or in the State of the Union, this economy will become more and more knowledge-based during the course of our lifetimes, our children's lifetimes, our grandchildren's lifetimes. There's no denying it. That is not going to change. And so when people talk about how the economy is changing and what, how come we can't have it the way it was back in the 50s and 60s, it used to be that if you were willing to work hard, you could drop out of high school, walk into the factory, say, I'm ready to work, and if you showed yourself to be a hard worker, you could actually build a middle-class life on the factory floor. And that's great. But if you go into a factory today, It's full of computers and robots. And if you don't know math and you don't know science, you can't get that job on the factory floor. And by the way, because of automation and technology, when I go to a car plant we sold more cars, U.S. automakers sold more cars last year than any time in history. It has come all the way back. It has rehired hundreds of thousands of folks. We created 900,000 manufacturing jobs. But you go into a plant and it's just quiet and clean, and probably where if you used to have 1,000 people in that plant, now you've got 100, just because it's so automated. And the point is, you are not going to be able to build a middle-class life in the society unless you have some education and skills that you can continually enhance and retool throughout your career. That's just, so young people, you know, I'm going to be honest, I'm not going to call them out, but if you're Ben Simmons, maybe you'll do fine not hitting the books. But although he's a very fine student, I'm sure. But my point is, unless you are one in a million, you better be working hard. You better be studying. And it's not going to stop. Now, the point you made is exactly right. How do we make sure everybody gets that opportunity? Because we know what the ingredients are. We know that early childhood education makes a huge difference, the kind of start that young people get. We know that poor kids oftentimes are not starting off in school with the same vocabulary because they haven't heard as many words, which means that we've got to train parents, not just not just teachers, to help get kids rolling. We know that schools that have great teachers and high standards and are creative and have the best technologies and that are used the right way make a difference, that high expectations make a difference. So we know all these things, but the way that education in America has been organized is local school districts, local control, and local property funding as the primary way of supporting schools. And that has led to big disparities in every state in the country. So the federal government can't get at that. What the federal government has done and can do is, through programs like Title I funding, we provide additional money to school districts that have a high proportion of low-income kids to try to give them more resources. The federal government, what I've done during my administration is worked with states and local school districts to give them incentives to adopt best practices, to help develop and train teachers to more effectively teach kids, to make sure that we've got high expectations and high standards. I just signed last year a reform of No Child Left Behind that had led to a lot of over-testing and stress among teachers, but had not necessarily improved learning. But ultimately, it's going to be up to states and local school districts to make a decision about how much do we care about equities in funding within states. That's not something the federal government can force states to do. There was a case way back in the 70s that was brought before the U.S. Supreme Court making the argument that it was unconstitutional to have this property tax-based system of funding education. And the Supreme Court said it's not unconstitutional, it's up to states to make a decision on what they want to do. Some state Supreme Courts have said it's unconstitutional to fund education that way. But if you don't have states making those decisions, the federal government can't force them to. We can help, we can give incentives, but federal funding for education accounts only about for 7% of total education funding. The main thing we can do is hold up best practices, show people this is what works, this is what doesn't, and then the people of those communities have to determine this is what we want to do to make a real serious change. All right? Now, one last point I'm going to make on education. Making sure folks like Shay can afford college is critical. And, you know, if I had my wish about what I could get Congress to do, I mentioned a whole bunch of issues. One of them also would be the proposal I put forward, 2 years of community college at no cost for responsible students. Tennessee has already adopted this. Tennessee's already adopted this proposal. The city of Chicago's working to adopt it. So you've got Democrats and Republicans who've seen the wisdom of this. If young people can go to a community college for 2 years at no cost, that means they can get a lot of credits out of the way. They can then transfer to a 4-year institution, but they've cut their costs in half. And this is an affordable proposal. I mean, we propose paying for it essentially by closing some corporate tax loopholes and some tax breaks for hedge funds. And it's enough money to actually make sure that every young person has at least that baseline. And that's part of the reason why America became an economic superpower, was because earlier than anybody else we said we're going to give everybody universal high school education. Now the next step is everybody, in addition to high school education, should be able to get that 2 years of post-secondary education as well. All right? So how much time do I have? I got to check with my people. 1 or 2 more questions? Okay. This young lady right there. You can stop jumping. Yeah. Yeah. I just called that. But do you actually have a question, or were you just jumping? All right, where's the mic? Right here, right here. Right here. Yes, you. I don't know why you're surprised. You raised your hand.
Thank you so much for taking my question. First off, my name is Anjanae Turner. I'm a law student at Tulane in New Orleans in the Big Easy. I'm here with my little sister and one of my other friends from Tulane who also went to Columbia for undergrad.
Okay.
First off, I just want to say that we're very inspired by you and the First Lady, and
That's nice.
You are our biggest inspirations, and we want to be just like you guys, so can you help us? Give us some tips.
So I'm sorry, what was the question?
The question is, can you help us be more like you and the First Lady, and give us some tips to be...
Some tips?
Yes.
Well, look, I will say this. You know, Michelle and I, we've been through an extraordinary journey. You know, when we think about where we've come from, you know, Michelle grew up on the south side of Chicago. Her mom was a secretary. Her dad worked at the water filtration plant. Neither of them ever went to college. They lived on the second floor of her mom's sister's house, a little bungalow. We were talking the other day. She was watching HGTV. She likes watching HGTV. And for those of you who don't know, Home and Garden TV. And I guess there was this show about this so-called movement or trend towards tiny houses. Right? So people get these little tiny, you know, some of them they put on the hitch on the back of their car, some of them they're already there. She said, I didn't know this was a movement because we lived in a tiny house. We just thought that's how you live. We didn't know you know, this was we were cutting edge. And so Michelle, her brother, her dad, her dad, by the way, had multiple sclerosis, so he's going to work every day. You know, he had to wake up an hour early to get to work. Just took it a long time for him to just button his shirt and get in the car, and then get out of the car, and then get to his job. And in that second floor and I know because Michelle and I, right after we got married, we stayed in that same place before we were able to save up enough to buy our place. These two folks were able to raise these incredible young people, Michelle and her brother, who both ended up going to college and both had these extraordinary careers. Now, I say all that because Michelle would be the first to say, and I certainly would be the first to say, the only reason this happened was because there were people who invested in us. So, there were park programs in Chicago, public park programs where she could be part of dance classes and her brother could be in Little League. And there were accelerated programs at her public elementary school where she had teachers who really took extra time. And then there was a magnet school that she was able to attend, and that was able to get her prepared for college. And then she got student loans and support in order to be able to go to college and go to law school. Although she tells the story about how her dad, he couldn't really contribute much, but he insisted on writing something, a check to help support that college education for her and her brother, because he knew what it was worth. And so when you ask sort of the main tip I have, look, we benefited because somebody invested in us. The most important tip I would have is make sure not only are you working hard to deserve that investment, but that you're also investing in the next generation coming up behind you. If you do that, then, you know, you're going to do great things. Your sister will do great things. And the one other thing I tell young people all the time, don't worry so much about what you want to be, worry about what you want to do. Worry about the kind of person you want to be and what you want to accomplish. The reason I say that is because a lot of times people ask me, oh, I'm interested in politics. How can I get... I say, well, let me tell you, the people who are most successful in politics and business and whatever, they don't start off saying, I want to be president or governor. They start off by saying, I want to give people a better education, or I want to make sure that folks have jobs, or I believe in justice under the law. And they pursue a goal. They're trying to get something done. A byproduct of that is that they may find themselves in positions of authority or power or influence, but even if you never get elected to something, if you're interested in the environment, you don't have to be the head of the EPA to make a difference. You might organize in a local community to clean up a site and plant gardens and make sure that the water's clean. And you can look back and then say, wow, what an amazing life I've had, and look at all the difference that I've made. And I'll tell you, the same is true in business. The most successful business people, you talk to somebody like a Bill Gates, they don't start off saying, I want to be the second richest man in the world. They start off saying, I really want to figure out this computer thing. I want to make this thing work better. I'm excited or interested in, you know, how we can solve this problem. And then because they're so passionate about it and they work so hard at it, turns out they make something really good, and everybody else says, I want to be part of that. That, I think, is a good tip as well. All right. I've only got time for one more question. It's a young man's turn, and he's right in front, and he looks very sharp. He's got his tie on and everything.
How you doing, Mr. President?
How you doing? What's your name?
My name is Anthony Kenner. I am an 18-year-old mass communication major, and I go to the Southern University A&M College.
Okay. All right. Okay.
But, Mr. President, first off, I'd like to say thank you for being an inspiration, because I aspire to be where you are in the next 30 years, and I know I will be there.
Okay.
But one of my main questions for you, sir, Mr. President, going to HBCU institutes such as Southern University, most times, I know when I go recruit out for high school students, most times a lot of them say, oh, I don't want to go to HBCU, because I feel like if I go to HBCU, I won't get as many opportunities as a student at university as LSU or Tulane. So what is your take of advice to students like me, thousands of students like me who go to HBCUs, and us finishing the course in order to be great leaders in this society?
Okay. All right. So you got see, you got some folks voting for you already. Well, first of all, the role of the historically black colleges and universities in producing our leadership and expanding opportunity, training doctors and teachers and lawyers and ministers who changed the landscape of America. I hope most people know that story, and if not, you better learn it, because it has been powerful and continues to be a powerful tradition. And I will tell you that if you have done well at an HBCU and graduated, and you go to an employer and are making the kind of presentation you make, or a Morehouse man makes, or a Spelman young lady makes, you will do just fine. I don't think it's true that actually people don't take that or discount that tradition, and you will be credentialed. You'll succeed. I do think that there's a range of challenges that HBCUs face. Some are doing great, some are having more difficulty, and some of that's good. Look, or some of it is the result of good things. We don't live in a society where African Americans are restricted in what colleges they can go to. And I want them to be able to go to an LSU or a Tulane, as well as a Southern, as well as a Morehouse, as well as a Howard or a Spelman. So more opportunities open up. That's good. We have been very supportive of HBCUs over the last several years, and to their credit, the previous administration had supported them as well. There are some HBCUs that are having trouble with graduation rates, and that is a source of concern. And what we've said to those HBCUs is, we want to work with you, but we don't want a situation in which young people are taking out loans, getting in debt, thinking that they're going to get a great education, and then halfway through they're dropping out. So now some of it is those HBCUs may be taking chances on some kids that other schools might not. And that's a positive thing, and that has to be taken into account. But we also have to make sure that colleges, any college, HBCU or non-HBCU, take seriously the need to graduate that student and not load them up with debt. Everybody needs a college education or a secondary an education beyond high school. If it's at a community college, if it's a technical school, if it's a training program, you're going to need more training as your career goes on. But I don't want you taking out a Pell Grant or a bunch of not a Pell Grant, like a federal loan or a private loan, and you walk out with $50, $60, $100,000 worth of debt and you didn't get your degree. So we are working very hard with every school, all colleges and universities, not just to reduce costs, but also to increase graduation rates, give students a better sense as they come in. Here's what it's going to take for you to finish. Here's why you've got to not lollygag and not take enough credits and think going to college is about partying, because it's actually about getting your degree. And we want students and parents to be better informed about that process ahead of time. All right, listen, you guys have been wonderful. Michelle, Sasha, Malia, Bo, Sonny, they all send their love. But before we go, I want to remind you of what I said. Our system of government only works when you are involved not just by voting, but by being informed and staying involved throughout the process. Your governor, your mayor, your congressman, they all want to do right by you. But there are going to be challenges. There are going to be folks who want to stop progress. There are going to be people who like the status quo. There's always going to be, in this democracy, countervailing pressures. And if you want to see change, you've got to help make it happen. When I ran for office in 2007, 2008, I did not say, yes, I can. I said, yes, we can, people. God bless you. Love you. Thank you, New Orleans. God bless America.
Well, you just heard